Hey everybody, I'm Jason Truding. As you may know, I am your proud host of the Brooklyn Bound podcast. This is one of the most fun things I do because I get to talk with awesome people about awesome shows that we have coming up. And we're about to do our second in-person show that will also be streamed at a pretty high level, I must add. Phong, you're going to be excited. Nelson Dorado will be in the house to make sure you look and sound good when you play on Brooklyn Bound November 4th. Phong Tran, welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me on.
Good to see you. We were just saying you are a second-time visitor to the Brooklyn Bound podcast.
It's good to be back.
And a regular at the events, I may add. It was cool to see you last week, whenever that was.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun to be back in the space.
I know, that's what I was gonna say. We haven't really had people in the space, it felt celebratory. And we are excited to keep celebrating November 4th and very excited that you'll be playing some music from your new album. So let's talk about it.
Yeah.
I was just saying that you've been on the podcast before, so anyone who wants to know even more about Phong, we did an interview with Phong and his duo partner, Darian, in Media Queer. Media Queer was a studio resident partner of SO's and all around friend of the band. I don't know how collaborators and community, members and all the stuff. So check out the Media Queer podcast and you can learn all about Phong. But I hear, since we're gonna talk about your new album, we get to hear some of your backstory as well. So the album's coming out on New Amsterdam. Is that true?
Yeah, November 19th. Yeah.
Awesome. And what's the album called?
It's called The Computer Room. So it's generally about kind of like my experience growing up on the internet, like in the late 90s, early 2000s kind of vibe. Just like I'd come home from school and immediately just dive right into the computer room. And that'd be like where I'd spend most of my time. And it was like playing video games with friends. Yeah, right?
I'm terrified, but I'm also slightly relieved. This is a topic that us in the band talk about a lot now, especially those of us with kids, but you are a wonderful human being, so I know it can be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I like found my community of like strangers on the internet. Like I feel like in some ways I felt a lot more connected to people who like I literally don't know what their first and last name are. I only know them by like their internet handles, and like we'd spent time playing video games together. And it's like the high school friends that you've kind of lost contact with. I have the same kind of like familiarity with these kinds of people. Yeah.
And why was that? It's like I imagine, though I didn't grow up on the internet in that way. When I was growing up, Phong, there was no internet. But I mean, what I imagine from many experiences on the internet, or just like with music in the world today, it's like you can find all of your people. There are crews or sub communities that you can find. Was that your experience? It's like through gaming, it's like these are my people, this is my person, these are my people.
That was exactly it. And then even kind of like beyond just like, oh, we have video games in common, it was that like I would find other queer people on these video games, and that would be kind of like my outlet to talk about like being gay before I came out to anyone in real life. Or like I was like kind of one of 3 Asian kids in school, so this is where I got to find other people who are into like my culture and like that kind of thing.
Oh, amazing. And so the music you're writing on this album, how much is it narratively about that, or how much is it just it's inspired by that process of being deeply in computer room mode? What's the line?
So it's like a little bit coming from the perspective now looking back. So it's like kind of like visiting your hometown and watching it kind of become a ghost town and like having like fond memories of like the things that you did there like once upon a time. Yeah, so there are some tracks that are references to places that I would visit, like the Slime Tree, which is kind of like one of the early hangout spots for me. And then
just to be clear, where is the Slime Tree? The Slime Tree is an online space that doesn't exist anymore.
It's technically a space. It's like in a game called MapleStory. So it's just like a map that like me and like a bunch of people would just be generally at.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So please excuse my old man ignorance. So you would go to this game. Like, so for me, help me out. I'm in Zelda. That was like,
Yeah.
that's right. But so if you knew a place in the Zelda world where other folks would congregate as well, that is that idea. So you go to this game and you're like, I'm going to meet you in Slime Tree,
Yeah.
meet up in this portion of the game, and then you could chat.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, we'd like chat, we'd like kill monsters, we'd kind of
Yeah.
just like hang out and do the thing. Yeah.
It's making me happy actually. You're like, you're helping me to demystify some of the oddness of the video game world into a really wonderful space. That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, that's awesome. So a track is called Slime Tree, I'm assuming.
Yes, yeah, that's the single that's out right now.
Amazing.
Yeah, and then I think one of my favorite tracks is /FA, which is like the chat command you would use to add someone new to your friends list.
Awesome.
So it's kind of like you know, the whole album's really just like a thank you for the people who spent time with me during that. And like,
so nice.
like, yeah.
And so, and how many tracks are there?
There are 9 tracks in total. Yeah. And then Scott Wolfschläger and Metropolis Ensemble also commissioned visuals for the album. So there's going to be a series of like music videos coming with most of the album. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So let me back up because I want to ask you some more questions, just like maybe specifically about it and like what we're going to hear on Brooklyn Bound. But how long a process was this album? Was this something that came together over a long period of time in terms of, I know you were mentioning you were in producer mode, like making it, or was it a compact process?
Oh no, this was like the idea for this project kind of morphed over like 4 years. So I think I started out like kind of obsessing about simulation theory and like the idea that we're kind of all in a computer simulation and what kind of implication that would mean for base reality if we're not, you know, like the actual real world. And then kind of realizing that I've kind of already had that experience, like via online interactions with people I've never met. So then I decided to kind of focus in on that aspect of it more. And then that kind of birthed this.
That's amazing. Can I tell you that I believe November 19th is also the date that one track, single off of my new album is coming out that has also taken years to put together. And it feels really, I imagine, I don't know what it feels like to you. I imagine when one of these projects comes together over such a long period of time, so 4 years, you're thinking and you're working and you're birthing this thing over 4 years. This is like a really celebratory, awesome moment. Like,
yeah,
the world, and I'm so excited we get to celebrate that at Brooklyn Bound.
Yeah, I'm fine. Like the biggest thing, I'm just like so excited to share this with people now. Yeah.
No, I totally feel you. I know I was telling you I'm in a hotel room in Erie, Pennsylvania. We were just playing a show. And it's like we flew all the way out here. It's a noontime show. So we play, it was like feels very like, you know, I don't know, we like our shows to get earlier and earlier so we can get to the hang afterwards, but this is like extreme. But it felt so good to just be like, there's a room full of people and we are going to share music with people. That's still such a special thing right now still. And I imagine for an album like this. So what is what's the live vibe going to be? What's the live, like, what sounds are we hearing on the album and what sounds are we going to hear live, and are they the same thing?
So most of the album was like, so I'll be doing all of this stuff you see here, all hardware, analog synths, and then like making the album was kind of improvising tracks and like just like kind of building stuff together and then going back in producer mode and like finding good cuts and like arranging them over like multiple takes. So the live version is essentially like recreating that in like one live take. Yeah.
So being in performer mode and producer mode in the same moment.
Yeah. So that'll be a fun challenge for me. And then there's some like Microsoft Sam samples I'm trying to figure out if I want to bridge over to the live version. And it's like the last track on the album. It's essentially like a really soft ambient synth riff with kind of like an admin credits of all of the usernames I can remember with like a Microsoft Sam voice kind of listing them off.
Amazing. I'm nodding along like I know what a Microsoft Sam voice is. I'm pretty sure I understand, but this is a Microsoft's computer.
Yeah, it's like the speech to text thing.
Yeah. Killer. I promised myself that I was gonna no longer nod along to things that I didn't understand and just not ask the question. Oh yeah. I've used Sam a lot too. My work. Can I ask you a question, Phong? Just because I'm interested about it myself too. Sorry to map everything you're saying onto my process right now, but I've been thinking a lot this pandemic and making music during this pandemic about how, for myself, I'm realizing more and more that even in the music that I write, I'm a kind of starter, and actually like having somebody else perform that producer mode or at least co-produce with me is so helpful. Because I've realized I'm stronger in one spot than the other. And so how often for yourself do you perform both of those modes, or maybe all the time, or how often do you work with other people in those modes? Like you mentioned, like the performer mode, and I guess that's also like, if you're improvising, that's like performer, composer, improviser mode. That's like one like approach. And then like that kind of switch in your brain to producer mode, which is a little bit more like editor mode more than creator, those two different things. How often are you the same person for yourself, and how much is that to balance? Like what's that process like for you?
I think it kind of goes in waves. Like I'm someone who gets bored very easily. So I'll be in improviser mode for like a week and be like, cool, I can't do this anymore. Like, let's go back and edit all of that. And then like, that's like my like editor producer mode. And then sometimes I'll just be like, I can't do music for a second. So that's when I just go fully into visuals.
That's amazing. Yeah. Do you know these? I got really into these rules. Do you know these 10 rules for teachers and students?
No, I don't.
I think they're very cool to check out. I think for a long time they were attributed to John Cage. And I think actually they came from this pop artist, Sister Karita Kent. Do you know her work at all? She was this nun back in the 60s and became a kind of anti-Vietnam activist and moved out of the church, but like makes all this kind of awesome pop art. But she had all these rules. And one of them is basically like what you're exactly saying right now, which I agree with so much. Is like, don't try to, I forget what she said. Don't try to create and she doesn't say edit, but like, don't try to do both of those at the same moment. It's like they're different processes. You know what I mean? Like when you're creating, just create and be in that scene. And then when you want to criticize or critique your work, be in a different scene. And I feel like that's maybe the question I was trying to ask. And I love your answer. It's kind of like, I'm going to sit in one place for a long time until I'm like, I got to get out of this place. And then I'm going to go to the other place.
Yeah.
Which is so cool. So let me, I feel so chatty and questiony right now, Phong. So let's say you're working on Slime
Tree. Yeah.
So you're working on Slime Tree. You improvise for a week. Like, were you doing this track by track, kind of like create mode, edit mode, move on to another space, improvise, and was it kind of like that, or were you in a improvising space for multiple tracks and then you move into a new headspace?
I think it's definitely the former. Like I'll do a lot of like planning things out, like what do I want the flow of the whole album to be, and then like what do I want the flow of this individual track to be, and then I'll kind of like just use that as a roadmap while I'm improvising, and I can deviate or do whatever to it, and then I'll kind of go back and relook at everything after I've done all of that. And then it's like when I get into like, cool, let's like take this take and this take, and we'll like kind of mangle them together, and that'll be a cool thing, or like find new things along the way while I'm in that. Like there are a lot of moments when I'm like editing where it feels a lot more creative, where I'm just like, oh, okay, this wasn't an idea I could do just while I was like by myself improvising, because I have all these tools now and I don't have to have like the physical dexterity to do something. So I can kind of just go and like, I'm like with Microsoft Paint kind of just like, cool, yeah, we'll do draw a little circle there and like it'll be cool.
You mean like with layers or something? Like,
yeah,
after the fact you can deal with more layers, then you can manage
exactly, yeah,
real-time performance.
yeah. I mean, it was something that I kind of picked up from like from Michael Gordon in Lessons with Him, where we just open up a Sibelius file and just like doing random things to it. Like it felt very performative of like, oh cool, and we're gonna just like do this thing and like cut this here and like move this over and just I don't know what this is gonna do. We're just doing it,
Yeah.
and it just felt like a little bit like mixing parts of the improvisation into the editing process, and that's kind of a little bit my approach. So there's a little bit of bleed over more so than like I'm here and then I'm here. But it's like there's definitely a focus on one thing versus the other when I'm there.
Yeah, I love it. I'm so pumped to hear these live. So one more question about the set before a couple final questions for you, Phong. This amazing analog synth station with the wires and that fake Zoom background you have back there that looks really cool. So that's your live rig as well?
Yeah.
And can you tell us just a little bit about it? So what is your rig?
So it's a series of oscillators, some filters, and just some control units. And then I'm basically just using the keyboard as kind of like the main control system for all of it.
And so the little bit I know about analog synth vibe and the little bit I've messed around with it and the little bit I've improvised with Jeff Snyder at Princeton, analog synths, from what I understand, are really hard to recreate, right? Like you get a sound that you love, it's really hard to come back the next day and bring back that exact sound, right? So that's just a kind of wonderful wild card that you're working with, that you're never gonna 100% recreate something. It's you understand the sound that you're looking for in a way that it's going to be a little bit different every time, but you can get to the vibe. Is that the?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like I'll have some notes on like I have everything patched where I'm like, okay, this needs to go here, this needs to go there, this needs to go there, to like at least get like the general kind of like this works the way I expect it to work. Like when I push this button, it'll do this.
Mm-hmm.
But like the specific sound of it will always need like small adjustments here and there, and even so I'm like a crazy disorganized person. So when I was recording
Yes.
Yeah, when I was recording a lot of stuff, I would kind of was just like in play mode, or was like, oh, you know what, I'll just throw this here and see what happens. But I didn't think to write that down while I was in it. Like I'll write it down once I know like, oh, I need to perform this, so I need to save somewhere.
Yeah.
But there are definitely sounds, especially in Slime Tree, where I'm like, cool, I know what this is supposed to do, so I need to just like refigure out how I made that sound that I recorded like a year and a half ago.
Yeah. I love that though, man. I really love that. I mean, I think it so much of this resonates with me, and the one album that I really made this way, just in the studio first, and then a bunch of albums that we've made that way, and then you figure out how to recreate.
Mm-hmm.
It's exciting because then you're kind of choosing like what needs to be the same every time and what's flexible and what's malleable, and it feels like inevitably in the way you work with the analog synth, something is flexible. But I think that's really exciting, and it makes the idea of live performance really exciting.
Yeah, I think also from like a compositional standpoint, it kind of like makes sure that I have some sort of core identity to each track, where I'm like, cool, as soon as you hear this sound, you should be able to instantly relate it to like this track, and like that should be like it should have its own identity in a way, you know, that's immediate.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think we think about music in very similar ways. I feel like that's like, yeah, it's like this has to happen or else this isn't this track, but these other things, you know, like what's the core? Like what's the core?
Right.
I'm so pumped. So how many tracks are you playing, or have you figured that out yet?
I have 3 ready to go. I'm figuring out a 4th one, I think. So hopefully 4.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Amazing. Well, I have 2 more questions to ask you. So one, if this project's been happening over the last 4 years, you said, and I may have already asked this question of you last time with Media Queer. I've been asking everybody, but you know, this last 19 months or whatever is like, this is an intense period of time that we're all dealing with for just like a stack of reasons, you know, like pandemic, George Floyd's murder, many overdue conversations in my circles that have admittedly been happening in other circles for a lot longer time, but like a deliberateness to conversations about equity and racism and anti-racism. An election is effed up. Like, I mean, just an insurrection, like just like these tons of things.
Yeah, it's been a long year.
A long year. Like, yeah, I left out like 80 things, you know. But just as far as like what that means to be an artist in this time, or what it means to, you know, I know I've had like 8,000 different ideas of what my responsibility is as an artist. Like, I should hang it up and do something else, or no, this is really important, or no, you know, like, or just as far as our process as artists, you know. So has this year or year and a half changed your process with this album at all? Or has your approach to making music, just, I guess, how have you dealt with this intense year being an artist, or specifically with this project? Has it informed it in any way?
I mean, I think, I don't know how much like it had at least an impact on this project, because it was already kind of like, it was something I would spend like a little bit of time on when I had like spare time. This was like my cool, I'm gonna do this project just for me. Like, this is like no one's asking me to do this. No one's like like I don't have a deadline for this thing, so I'm gonna do my best to like make this what I really want to make it. And then I think when everything shut down, I was kind of like my escape from all that. Honestly, it was like, I need to turn off the news. I need to not I need to disengage from the world a little bit right now, and I'm going back to the computer room. Like, I want to be 12 years old playing like MapleStory again. Yeah, so it was kind of therapeutic for me to kind of have this project exist outside of all of that. And then, you know, obviously having other projects that very much dealt with that, but it's like, I feel like I've been talking to Darren a lot about rest, like taking care of yourself, and working on this was kind of that for me, just to be like, yeah, I have no like huge pressure to do this thing aside from me wanting to do it. So I'm going to do that, and it'll be fun. Like, yeah.
That's a powerful thing though.
Yeah.
Right? To say like, that's awesome. That's really awesome. I mean, to say like, I'm doing this for me. And I've been talking to, I know you saw Beth the other night at Brooklyn Bound. She's been working on this album, and feels that same way. It's like, I am doing this because I want to do this. Actually, and Damsel's gonna be playing the same night as you. Actually, they're gonna be playing, which is great. Yeah. So Damsel's putting out an album. I will talk to them on a podcast soon. But just that idea of like, I've been working on this. If I stop doing this, nobody else is asking me to do this. I'm doing this because it's really important to me. It's like such a powerful statement, you know. It's such a like a really yeah, a really wonderful way to make music, I think.
Yeah, and it's like, this is like one of those things where like, I'm doing it for me, but I also know that there are other people out here who are kind of in that boat of like, yeah, I was like an isolated kid and I spent a lot of time on the internet, and those are like a lot of my meaningful relationships. Like, I'm not alone in that. So I'm hoping, I don't know, like for projects like this, it's never really like, oh, I want kind of everyone to listen to this and I want it to be like super popular. It's more like, I want to find like the 5 nerd kids and I want them to love it. And as long as they love it, then I've done my job.
Yeah. Well, I maybe I'm just a different generation nerd kid, man. I think I'm really gonna love it. So I'm not gonna see my screen handle up there on the credits. But how amazing would it be if somebody did? Are you expecting or hoping that somebody will see there and be like, wait a minute?
I mean, there are definitely some like real life friends who I still play video games with, who I've kind of snuck in there. So they'll definitely notice their names.
Shout out.
Yeah. But yeah, there are definitely some people who I've like had on my friends list and they've just been offline for years. And I don't know, if they find it, then I'll be stoked and hopefully they reach out. Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Okay, last question for you, Phong. And I wonder, you can answer this question just as you, or as related to this project, or related to Yeah, solo performing on synth. I've been asking everybody, just thinking back to the moment now that we're playing concerts again, now that So is in Erie, and we were at Applebee's in the middle of nowhere yesterday because everywhere else was shut down, and we were talking stories about telling stories about when we were in Applebee's at this other place in some random town in the middle of the U.S., or about like what music we were playing or when this crazy thing happened on stage. The kind of like the tour stories that have become our kind of like band glue. The kind of whatever the way we kind of relate to each other in that way. Like do you have a live show in the pre-March of 2020? What's a fun show story to share? It was either because it was awesome or because your analog synth blew up or because there was a fire on stage or because something crazy happened, or like what's a fun Phong show story?
Oh God. I see. I'm trying to think back. I luckily, fingers crossed, I haven't had like a total disaster on stage.
November 4th, Phong, November 4th.
Yeah, I know.
Gotta happen sometime.
Yep, I'm overdue.
Well, then what about a really one, happy stories are great too.
Oh yeah. I don't know. I think it was honestly more recently just like when Darren and I played at Elsewhere, we kind of did a cover of oh wait, no. Okay, sorry. It was when we all right, this is like kind of my proudest moment. So Darren and I were playing at Mass Mocha as part of the Banahan Summer Institute. And we were doing a piece about like sexuality on Grindr and how it's so intermingled with racism, and like the overtness of it is like I'm into XYZ things, also no fats, no femmes, no blacks, no Asians. Like that's just like a thing. So we decided to just kind of like throw all of that in one piece and kind of just confront a lot of people with that. So the piece immediately starts off with me asking, "Are you into eating ass?" And then like
that's the first thing.
This elderly what?
That's the way the piece begins.
Yes, that's like the start of the piece, and then immediately this elderly couple just like leaves, and I'm like, yes, score.
That's hard. That's great. So we have one story about it was a group of people leaving, but I think your story is better because they were obviously leaving because of what you just did. That's very direct. We have this weird story where we played this John Cage show in Toronto, and it turns out that a group of composition students from Toronto, or composers from Toronto, bought a block of tickets, and I guess they hated John Cage. And like 9 minutes into the first piece, like these 20 people got up and just left together, and we were like, what is happening? And we learned after the show that it was like this staged walkout. Like, come on. Like, what? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. You just wasted, whatever overpriced ticket, $30 on, to make that statement.
Just don't buy the tickets.
Don't buy the ticket is a better statement. But your story, I think, is more like, they planned that before they heard us at all. Yours is like, we are doing this. I am out of here. That's amazing. Wow. Well, remarkable. I wish I was there, Phong. I'm imagining there's nothing you can do at Brooklyn Bound that's going to make somebody leave. But we can try, right? We can always try.
Do my best. New goal, just kick the whole audience out.
Just get us all out of it. We'll put you at the end of the night, and then that's amazing. Well, I'm very pumped about it. It's going to be November 4th. I believe that's a Thursday. It's at 8 p.m. Eastern. A few of you all in Brooklyn can come. It's a very small audience, but the rest of you all can watch on our YouTube channel, comment, be cool in the chat, send good vibes. Thanks for chatting, Phong.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is a fun chat.
Thanks for playing your set. Thanks in advance for bringing this music to Brooklyn Bound. I'm so pumped. I'll see you then.
All right. Yeah.
All right. Take it easy.
Bye.
See ya.